Welcome to our podcast, The Words That Make Us.
Consider this time with us as your excuse to take a break from everything.
Every episode, we choose a word that makes us think, wonder, or dream. We read a range of texts that explore different aspects of this word.
And we let our thoughts wander. We hope that yours will too. So grab your favourite tea.
Or a beer.
And join me, Rama.
And me, Tony Bailey. Let's go!
So today's episode is about wealth.
Hi Rama, you're looking great today. Hey, have you been splashing out? That's a nice new outfit. Run into some money? Got loads of cash?
I wish. But you're looking like $1 million yourself.
Hey, thank you.
All green and crinkly.
Oh, okay. That's nice. But anyway, today's podcast, we're talking about wealth. Mm-hmm. Surely being wealthy and wealth's more important to women than men, do you think?
Is that you quoting Onassis there?
If women didn't exist, all the money in the world would have no meaning. Aristotle, Onassis.
I mean, given that he married Jacqueline Kennedy and we kind of all know why she married him, maybe that's where this quote came from.
What was it about the multimillionaire Aristotle Onassis that first attracted you? Yes.
Yeah. I don't want to judge her, but I'm guessing not his looks.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know if I agree with the thing that women care more about money. This is another thing where sexism plays a role when we say, oh, gold diggers. I've never heard that being said about a man. Why is it always said about
Chance
women?
would be a fine thing, wouldn't it? No, but that's true. I think the image is that the men earn the money and
the women spend
it, and women are there both to spend it and to be a showpiece for it.
But I think what he's also saying is that kind of men kind of earn it so they can gain women, so they can have power or they can have the right woman on their arm, like you're saying, to showcase a beautiful woman or something like that. It's what motivates them.
So Rama, let me ask you a personal question then. So if you secretly found out that I was a multimillionaire, would you suddenly find me a lot more attractive than you do right now?
I don't know if I can find you any more attractive than I find you right now.
That's the correct answer to the question. No, but just as a philosophical question, do you think that actually the fact that a guy, or a woman for that, I'll answer the woman question in a minute. You meet a guy and you also happen to know that he's loaded. Does that make a difference?
So I think I might sound like a hypocrite if I said no outright. But actually the answer is no. Because to me, if I were after money, you would not see me here. I would not be in front of you. I would be with somebody, with a lot of money. But that was never something that meant a lot to me. I think what really means a lot to me is another kind of wealth, wealth of character. That really means a lot to me. That is very attractive to me.
So interesting. So let's try and get to definitions then, because we've talked about wealth with money, but you've also just brought in another aspect of wealth. So there's clearly more to it than just money here. So when you hear the word wealth or wealthy, is your go-to the financial part of it or not? How do you define it?
So, I think when people say wealthy, my mind goes straight to money. I think that's the definition that people agree on. Unless you put it in a context where you say, oh, he's got a wealth of knowledge or a wealth of... what else would you say a wealth of?
Personal hygiene problems. Experience. Tools in his tool set.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes.
But I think mostly when we say wealth, we mean money, don't we?
I think it's why it's a really good topic for our podcast today, because I think as a word, it is almost exclusively used now.
Yeah.
In the context of having an excess of money, where I think maybe in the past, I'm wishing you health, wealth, and happiness, and wealth in a much wider context, linked with abundance and with, extending
prosperity.
Prosperity is another nice word.
Yeah.
Prosperity doesn't sort of imply greed.
Yeah.
It implies prospering, doing well.
Exactly. Blooming in a way.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Interesting, yeah. Blooming and abundance is kind of words you would use with in the garden as well.
Exactly. So you have money, or you have abundance, you have something that is a little bit more than what you need, and so that allows you to flourish in a way. So that's prosperity.
Yeah.
Whereas when we say wealth, there's the it kind of became a dirty word, didn't it?
Well, I think it has, certainly within my lifetime. The use of the word and how you feel about the word has changed drastically.
You change it, like you usually we say, like they're well off, kind of a kind of euphemism. Oh, they're well off, but wealthy is kind of a word that people don't use in a nice way to describe people.
Well off is a mild form now.
Yeah.
I mean, a family being well off means they've got plenty of money.
Yeah.
They're okay. They're comfortable. Whatever.
Yeah.
But even that, for me, isn't the really ugly connotation that wealth now has as a result of that kind of uber ultra wealth that is a real 21st century feature that possibly wasn't there before.
That's true.
And it's kind of dirtied the word. It's almost like if you say, what's your aspiration in life? Oh, I want to get a good job and become very wealthy.
Yeah, that's kind of very materialistic.
But
it's
but what's wrong with that? It's only become a negative thing because of how wealthy
people are behaving
and behaving to other people. It's kind of like, say, the behaviour and the attitude and the morality that goes with it.
Yeah, literally goes away with it. Yeah.
So let's put you on the spot then. Are you a wealthy woman, Rama?
Yeah, it depends on what way you see it. If it's a wealth of kindness, then I hope so.
Let's talk money, because that's what we're talking about right now.
No, I don't think I've ever been wealthy, and I wonder if somebody with my spending habits would ever be wealthy.
Yes, even Aristotle and Onassis passed on you, Rama.
Yeah.
No, that's interesting, because we're both teachers. I have, in my previous life experience working in the city, brushed against wealth.
Yeah.
And been in, had periods in our life where I've earned good money compared to what
when you worked
teacher.
as in a bank or something, right?
Yeah, I had my own company. I had my own consulting firm. So for a short while, I was, raking in the cash, shall we say.
Wow.
So I've sort of seen both sides of it. So the word wealth, it's nice to earn plenty. I just cannot deny that.
Yeah.
So I can't put a judgment on somebody. It's disgusting that they're wealthy.
That would be hypocritical,
it
really.
Would be completely, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
We'd all like to be wealthy.
Yeah.
But it didn't make me happier. That's interesting.
Okay.
So how much money would you need then, approximately, do you think, to be wealthy?
Okay. So I think there's a distinction. For me to be happy, actually one of the students asked me that last time. They said, how much would you need to be happy? Like, I am happy, but I mean, for my dreams to come true, I would say I would be very, very happy with $1 million. But I think I would have more of my dreams fulfilled if I had a few million. But I think wealthy is now...
You're aiming quite high there.
Yeah, but I'll tell you what my dream is, though, but maybe later. Should I tell you now or later?
No, let's start there. Let's start with the basics.
With my dream?
So if you could have the figure now, you're saying about $1 million. You mean earning $1 million or just having $1 million in the bank?
Having $1 million in the bank, I think that would allow me to do some things that I've dreamed of doing.
Yeah. And would you change your life, or would you just feel happy because you had $1 million in the bank?
I don't know if I would be able to even change my life with 1 million, because that wouldn't be enough for me to survive because there are things I want to do. So basically what I want to do is I want to have a small condo somewhere, maybe in Morocco, something overlooking a beach, because I love the sea.
Yeah.
And I would like to start a school in Lebanon for the Syrian refugees because I feel like this is a wasted generation. So these are my two dreams.
Okay, so that's interesting. So for you, wealth is transformative insofar as it would enable you to transform the life that you lead to do something that would give you wealth in other ways.
Yeah, exactly.
In terms of, in return for the wealth of money that I give, I receive the wealth of joy, experience that I get as a result of it.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
How about you? What would you consider wealthy? Maybe you are wealthy. I don't know. Oh, look at him blushing.
Well, we can talk about that in a little bit. I'm not going to give you my exact figures and whatever, but of course I'm a child of a generation where the middle classes suddenly became the wealthy or wealthier part. We'll talk about it in a second, but for me, I just want to have enough that I didn't have to lie awake at night worrying. So I'd be happy with $1 million as well. Would I want to then go about doing something? I suppose if I was putting my good boy hat on, I'd say, yes, I'd really like this money so that I can do something transformative. But at the moment, I'd just like the $1 million so I could sleep at night.
Okay.
Because it would just mean, I don't have to worry. I love what I do. I like coming to school.
Yeah.
I love teaching. I love the people I interact with. But no teacher goes into teaching in order
for the
to
money.
be wealthy.
Yeah.
So if you just knew you had that, like your insurance policy, then that would be fine. Okay, so this is a subject that I'm a bit of an expert in.
Yeah, because you're a business teacher, aren't you?
And also I really feel quite passionately about inequality. And I'm anxious even, the two of us talking about how we both feel like we're not wealthy, when in the scheme of things, yeah, of course we're wealthy, when the majority of the world's population are living in conditions, and earning money, just a fraction of what we earn.
Yeah.
So I guess we could put things into perspective just in terms of...
Yeah, this is what I try to remind my kids of. I always try to tell them, remember that we are wealthy. And they're like, yeah. I'm like, no, I really, literally, we are wealthy. We have a roof over our heads. We have enough to eat. We live way above the line of poverty. So, yeah, it's all a matter of perspective.
So, without giving our salaries away, an individual in the top 10% earners in the world will be earning, this is in US dollars, $120,000.
A year, okay.
That's the top 10%. So there's 90% earning less than that.
Wow.
An individual in the bottom half will be earning $3,900 a year.
A year?
50% of the population are earning less than that.
Wow.
So when talking about wealth, we can't justifiably say that we're not wealthy.
No.
Because we are.
Yeah, absolutely.
So when we're looking downwards, I feel terribly guilty when I'm complaining about being awake at night worrying about finances.
Yeah.
I live in a nice place. I don't really have any real money worries. I'm not
Financial woes.
I'm not going to be living on the streets.
Yeah.
And if worst came to the worst, I could always make ends meet somehow. Okay. Let's do a little experiment then, just to put in context what wealth really does mean in 2024. So I did a bit of research on this because there's wealthy and there's ridiculously wealthy.
Yep.
And I think that that's a feature of modern society, is that we've always had wealth and there's always been the landed gentry and whatever. So before the war, there was a wealthy upper class, and they were characterised by people who they were characterised by people who owned a lot of land, or had a lot of assets in terms of possessions and buildings. And then the First and Second World War came, and that equalised wealth. So a lot of that wealth that was in those old families became lost, and suddenly in the 1950s, especially in Europe, there was
There weren't so many
the
wealthy
inequality
people.
gap was
Reduced.
a lot less because families coming out of the war and working, and the emergence of the new middle class was pulling people up, and employment for those people in the lower classes. But since 1970, that inequality gap has started to widen again. And this time it is not because of people owning land and possessions like in the early 1900s. It's to do with people having huge numbers of assets in investments, in mortgages, in basically cash vehicles that is just being taken out of the economy. And that's a different sort of wealth, right? Because if you owned a castle, it wasn't denying anybody anything. It's just a castle. It's just a big thing.
Yeah.
But now if you earn $1 billion and you only needed $1 million, then that's 999,900, which is not in the money supply for other people to enjoy. It's like locking all of the resources away so nobody can use it. And I think that's really selfish, dangerous. I don't see anything wealthy about that.
Yeah.
It's not an abundance because nobody's got it.
Yeah. I mean, especially if you think of all the maybe whole countries that are really struggling.
Absolutely.
And you have somebody who could, I think of the football players, for example, that one of them might come from a country in Africa or South America that is really, really struggling at the moment. This one football player could really bail out the whole country.
Yeah, and a number of them have.
Which is really admirable, but you don't see that being the norm.
No, not at all. Okay, so in the United States, you are considered wealthy if you have a net worth of around $500,000.
Oh, really?
That means that you have property, car, possessions that are worth $500,000.
Really? I didn't think that would qualify as wealthy.
That's a definition. However, the median wealth of an American is around $200,000.
Okay.
Which tells you that, US is a wealthy country, and the median in the middle, Americans have assets of around $200,000. Okay, so let's do an experiment, Rama. So if median wealth equals $200,000, let's go to a football stadium.
Yep.
And let's imagine the football stadium is our local one, so FC Augsburg.
Okay.
And the capacity of FC Augsburg is about, say, 25,000 people. Okay? So imagine that one of those seats...
I hope you're not asking me a math question.
It might be.
I would fail.
No, it's an imagination question.
Okay.
So one of those seats represents one person's wealth, $200,000.
Okay.
Okay? So you are that person. You get one seat, $200,000. So... on your row, if somebody has 5 seats, they're a millionaire.
Okay. Yeah.
They've got $1 million. Okay. How many seats do you think Elon Musk has in the football stadium?
Oh, yeah.
You've got 1. A millionaire's got 5.
Yeah.
There are 25,000 seats in the stadium.
I'm guessing at least half. At
least half the seats in the stadium.
Yeah.
Yeah, it seems a lot, doesn't it?
Yeah.
No, let me tell you, he personally owns all the seats in 96 football stadiums.
Oh my goodness. Oh my God. Okay. I can't put that number into like an imaginable...
No, and that's why the modern concept of wealth needs a new word.
Yeah.
Because it just doesn't do it justice, does it?
No, it doesn't capture the reality of those people. Like, they're living on a totally different planet, it seems.
Yeah. So, I don't understand how society can allow somebody
to have that
much money.
I know.
We have, limitations on lots of other things. You can't go more than 120 kilometres per hour down the highway, supposedly.
Yeah.
You can't do X or Y.
You can't drive while you're drunk. You can't. There are so many
We
things.
have like a minimum.
Yeah.
Like the minimum wage you can pay somebody is, whatever it is,
Yeah.
10 euros.
Yeah.
Why can't we have a maximum that says, look,
That's true.
there is no justification in this world why anybody needs to have more than this amount of wealth?
You should cap it at some point and say now it flows over to somebody else.
What would you do if you had, you said you needed $1 million.
Yeah.
What if you had $243.2 billion in your bank account?
I can't even think in those terms. My little small brain doesn't comprehend that kind of wealth.
You see, here's the irony, Rama, is that with $1 million in the bank,
Yeah.
your thoughts are about going to Lebanon to create a small school
Yeah.
for refugees and orphans.
Yeah.
In Elon Musk's mind, and I don't want to poo-poo the guy, he's a fantastic entrepreneur, lots of respect, he's been hugely successful.
Yeah.
But in his mind, he's building a space rocket to take himself to Mars.
Such a waste of money, man.
Just think of all of the orphans and, the kids and the social health care and all of the things that surely as a human being you would want to provide for your fellow human being.
Yeah.
As a way of giving back maybe, or
Yeah.
just as a means of being a good person. But you have so much wealth that you feel compelled to want to fly to another planet.
To another planet.
I mean, how does that work?
It reminds me a little bit, like, it's also a risky trip. Like, if you think of that submarine where those very wealthy people, remember that thing that was big in the news?
Yeah.
And how they ended up all dying because of, wanting the thrill of doing something so dangerous, going so deep.
Yeah.
Why are we doing this? Why are we wasting our resources on something that is so ridiculous when there are people literally starving in the world?
Yeah. And I'm really aware of taking this moral high ground. I think it's dangerous when you don't have that kind of wealth to stand back and say, I think that's disgusting that you're spending your money on that.
Yeah.
I understand that's, it's very easy to take the moral high ground in our situation. But I do know that if I had 243 billion, that I wouldn't have 243 billion. I would be making sure that I couldn't live with it, and I'd want to be, if you pull Jeff Bezos's and Elon Musk's money together, for example, the concept of universal healthcare in the United States, everybody would have
the best treatment,
the best healthcare. That would be a major impact on poverty and educational levels. It's a no-brainer.
But it has to do with the kind of person you are. But some people can live like that. I mean, if you talk about Jeff Bezos, for example, it is well known that the people who work for him, at least in America, are really mistreated.
Yeah.
They're not paid enough. And this is by one of the wealthiest, who actually was the wealthiest and might still be the wealthiest person in the world at the moment. Yeah. But I do know, for example, there was this one story, something that really touched me. There was a teacher who used to work here, and I remember she had worked for 1 year only in a really poor country that I'm not going to mention. And I asked her why she came here. She said one day she was sick and she went to the doctor. And she was working at an international school and earned quite well. And then she saw how those very poor people were sitting in a different room. They were treated differently. They were not able to see the doctor. And she felt sick to her stomach. She could not take it. She could not live there. And so she left the school and came to work in Germany instead. Mind you, she cried when she got her first salary because of the amount of tax. And she left again. She finished the year and went somewhere to America or something. But I really admired that lady because she was not able to walk or live in a street where people were obviously very, very poor.
Yeah.
So not everybody would be able to be those people that you're talking about and just like, I'm oblivious to everybody else's suffering. And if I'm really, really good and feeling like a philanthropist, I'll go and throw a few million at something and call myself a good person.
Yeah. It's a really difficult one, isn't it? I mean, the whole thing about philanthropy.
Yep. But if you think of it, like, for example, there is this one guy that I really respect. Actually, I'm sure there is more, but there is one guy, the old owner of Twitter. His name is Jack Dorsey.
Yes.
And actually, back when he was still like owning, or he still owned Twitter or something, I think he donated 33% of his wealth to good causes. And that is somebody worthy of respect and admiration. It's like you go and make all that money, a big chunk of it, not all of it, not half of it, But still, a big chunk of it goes.
Because the amounts you're talking about, when you say, I gave a third of my wealth away,
Yeah.
When that wealth is so ridiculously huge, the absolute amount that you're left with is still ridiculously huge.
Exactly.
I'll give you an example of that. I mean, so according to US regulatory filing last year, Elon Musk, I'm really sorry to be laying into Elon Musk. It's just that the data's available.
Yeah.
And I'm just using him as an example of somebody who's
An extreme example.
ultra mega wealthy.
Yeah.
It's not for me to make a valid judgment,
Yeah.
but he generously donated $1.95 billion last year of his shares to charity. Not cash, but shares. And a lot of people reacted to that as, what a great hero figure. He's donated 1.95 billion
Yeah.
to charitable causes. Okay. It didn't say which organisations were recipients of the shares, so we don't know which charity or charities got the benefit, and maybe that's not our business. Okay, but if you put that into context, 1.95 billion is less than 1% of his personal wealth. Less than 1%. This is like the average German with median wealth of 250,000 euros giving 2,000 euros to charity.
Yeah.
So, on the one hand, it's good that you're giving some money to charity, but on the other hand, is that all? Is that all, or, isn't it the least you can do, sort of thing?
But I think in this case, it's not a relative thing. Like somebody who lives in Germany and earns 200,000, donating 2,000 is not a lot, but it's also not so bad because you're living you're middle class.
Yeah.
But we're talking about someone who has so much money. If he wanted to burn that money, he would not be able. Like if he had it all in cash and tried to burn it, he would not. He would die before he's able to do that.
Greenhouse gas emissions would be
would kill us all first. Yeah. So I think that's not really a good comparison there, because I think people like him really have the responsibility to change the world. But then I think, and I'm not a conspiracy theorist or anything, but I think if people started doing that, then the balance, the equilibrium in the world would change, and then they would not have as much power as they have now. It's because money is power. It's really not about the money. It's about the power you exercise.
And I think that's where with the word wealth has gone, hasn't it?
Yeah.
It's gone closer to power than abundance.
Yeah.
And so we do know that there are, a lot of mega wealthy people who call the shots when it comes to decisions being made politically, economically, and socially.
And even if not obviously, definitely behind the scenes. Just think of the people who fund all of the presidential campaigns in America.
Correct. Yeah,
just think about that and see how much they influence the whole world with their money.
Yeah. Just to put Elon to bed.
For Elon.
243 billion, his personal wealth. If he was to get interest on that per year at a rate of, say, 3%, normal kind of rate, then that would be over 7 billion in interest, which in itself is like an obscene amount of money. That's with no effort required. He doesn't have to get out of bed to earn 7 billion a year.
Yeah. Speaking of interest, did you know that interest is not allowed in Islam?
I was going to ask you about Islam and what the Quran has to say about wealth, because I do think at least the Bible has a lot to say, but it's interesting to see where that's taken us.
Yeah.
So what does the Quran say? Is it bad to be wealthy, or is it a good virtue to be wealthy?
I think there are some things that we have to agree on before we can talk about wealthy or not wealthy. I think the most important thing is that you're not exploiting anyone. So interest is an absolute no-no. And that's why you find these Islamic banks that are now, I don't know, people debate whether they are actually a thing, if they're actually Islamic banks, because I think in the end they do use the money to make money, and then they're not giving it to you, so they're keeping it. So I don't know, but like I know that interest is not allowed, because back then there were creditors who would only give you money if you gave them interest, and that exploited people, blah, blah, blah. So that's one thing that I actually really admire. Something else that I like is that there is, so see here how people pay a church tax.
Yes.
In Islam, there's no such thing, but there is a requirement for you to donate a certain amount of money every year. And usually...
For everybody?
For everybody, yeah. And so, like, even people who are lower middle class, I don't know, what's the word?
Lower middle class.
Lower middle class.
So they have to give a proportion of their income.
They do.
And what is that used for?
That is used usually as alms for people who, and you give it to people that you don't give it to like a big charity or something. You give it to people that could be family members, could be friends, could be somebody who cleans your house, somebody who really needs money. And usually, which I really like, you give it to them before like a big celebration like Eid al-Adha, Eid al-Fitr. You give it to them.
So how do they monitor that you've given
They
money?
don't.
So it's kind of a notion is that...
Yeah.
If you earn this amount of money, this is how much money you are expected to give in terms of...
Exactly. And we leave that to your conscience.
Yeah.
Yeah, we leave it to you calculating this. And
I really like that.
I like that a lot.
Does it work in reality?
From what I have seen, it works really well.
Yeah.
And people usually give a little bit above, so they're always on the safe side.
Yeah.
I remember my dad, he was very, very worried that the deadline would come and he hasn't given out the money yet. And you do it depending on how much money you own and also how many people there are in your family. So you have to give for each person a certain amount of money and for what you... Yeah. So I really, really like that. It just meant it's just another way of being... a social system, basically.
Do people abuse that system? So do you get some people who make sure they've got people giving them donations from multiple sources, so actually they end up being quite well off because they're abusing the system?
I don't know about well off, but I do know that there are people who will always, tell you how poor they are, so they will be, getting money from different sources. But I think, of course, there will be people who abuse the system. This is a given anywhere. This is human nature. But in general, given how people in the Middle East are quite religious and they want to go to heaven in the end, they do this as a way to purify their money and to make sure that they're doing their bit, which I really like. Also, like if you can't fast a day in Ramadan, for example, then they're like, okay, you're sick, you can't fast, that's fine. But now you have to help a poor person break their fast. So you give them money so they can eat something at the end of the day, which I find really, really cool.
Yeah.
But so here's a bit from the Quran that I actually like, and it's how it describes wealth, like how wealth is seen. So it says here, know that the life of this world is but amusement and diversion and adornment and boasting to one another and competition in increase of wealth in children, like the example of a rain whose resulting plant growth pleases the tillers. Then it dries and you see it turned yellow. Then it becomes scattered debris. And in the hereafter is severe punishment and forgiveness from Allah and approval. And what is the worldly life except the enjoyment of delusion?
Yes.
So it's like money is something you enjoy. Just be careful. It is a delusion. And you have to make sure that you're using it right.
Yes, I like that.
There's another one that I really like. And then I'm going to ask you if you have something from the Bible.
Yeah.
What I really like is... actually, there's two. May I read two more to you?
Yeah, no, I like.
These
I'm
are
interested.
Two verses from the same surah, the same chapter, Al-Nisa. The first one says, give orphans their wealth, and do not exchange your bad possessions for their good ones, nor consume their wealth by mixing it with your own, for this is indeed a great sin.
Okay, what does that mean?
So
don't mix their wealth in with your own. Why is that a sin?
I think here they're talking about a specific case of orphans, and you take orphans in. Yeah. So usually what happened was that the uncle or somebody from the family would take the orphans in, and then they would take their money and kind of spend it on their own family and kind of now you live with us, now the money goes to everyone. And that is a big sin.
It's kind of keep the money in the family.
Yeah, and also instead of saving it for you when you get older, you take your money
Yeah.
I'm going to spend it on my family or on myself now.
Yes.
I'm going to basically rob you of your money. So I really like that, and people have to be really careful there.
Yeah.
And the last one is, and do not consume one another's wealth unjustly, or send it in bribery to the rulers, in order that they might aid you to consume a portion of the wealth of the people in sin, while you know it is unlawful.
Yeah.
So that's another
Yeah.
thing, is like, be careful. Bribery is a big thing as well.
Yeah.
Which is a bit ironic, because bribery now is very common in the Middle East, because corruption.
And I think bribery and corruption are just on a sliding scale, aren't they?
Yeah.
And we talked a little bit earlier about the level of influence that certain people have because of their wealth.
Yes.
And you might not call it bribery.
A gift.
You might not even call it corruption.
Yeah.
But you'd certainly call it influence. And
Yeah.
at some stage, on that scale,
Yeah.
it tips so that it's no longer a healthy one.
I like this. They call it oiling somebody's mustaches.
Yes.
I like that.
Yes. I like that too. Yeah. There's little point being the richest man in the cemetery, Rama.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that's just a nice quote from
It's a very nice one.
Peter Ustinov. I think the Bible's an interesting one because on the one hand, wealth features massively in the Bible, and especially in the teachings of Jesus. I'm doing some research, found some figures. There are around 2,350 verses concerning money in the Bible.
Wow.
And I'm going to read them all to you now.
Thank
No, I'm
you,
not going
yes.
to, no.
Mm-hmm.
That's twice as many verses as there are about faith or prayer.
Okay.
Things that you would expect there to be more.
Yeah.
So Jesus obviously had a lot to say about money. Nearly 15% of everything he says in the Bible concerns money and possessions.
As a cautionary thing.
Yeah, mainly,
Okay.
yes. Yeah. Of his 38 parables, nearly half of them are on the topic of money. The only subject he taught more about in the scriptures than money was the kingdom of God.
Okay.
And the two were normally linked. So,
How?
well, my favourite money quote is probably the most famous one. Most people who are Bible readers would know this quote. This is from Matthew's Gospel in the New Testament. Jesus said to him, "If you would be perfect, go, sell what you possess and give it to the poor, and you will have treasure in heaven. And come, follow me." When the young man heard this, he went away sorrowful, for he had great possessions. And Jesus said to his disciples, "Truly, I say to you, only with difficulty will a rich person enter the kingdom of heaven. Again, I tell you, it is easier for a camel to go through the eye of a needle than it is for a rich person to enter the kingdom of God." When the disciples heard this, they were greatly astonished, saying, "Who then can be saved?" But Jesus looked at them and said, "With man this is impossible, but with God all things are possible." So I think it's fair to say Jesus had a bit of an anti-wealth thing, didn't he?
He was maybe a bit of a communist.
A wise man saves for the future, but a foolish man spends whatever he gets, is a counter view in the Old Testament. And so I think the Bible is kind of mixed messages, because if you take the Old Testament, it's very much about saving. Save for a rainy day, that would, that's good.
Yeah.
Whereas as in Jesus' behaviour towards the moneylenders in the temple and to, the wealthy in society, he kind of overturned that and said, no, there is no place for possessions and wealth in the kingdom of God. So the thing is that that's what the Bible says, but that's not the behaviour that is modelled in Christian society at all.
Yeah.
And given it features so heavily in the Christian scripture. How did people miss out on that?
Yeah, I mean, it's the same, I think, in all religions. You would think that being, told to value people more than they value money and not to be obsessed with money and all of that, you would think that a lot of people would be, I don't know, more generous maybe with their money, more giving. But unfortunately,
Good
it's not.
Samaritan idea.
Yeah, no. But this actually reminds me of, because when I was researching, I also looked at what Sufists would say, because as you know, I'm interested in Sufism, and basically they call these people that do the twirling thing, they're called a dervish.
The dervish,
and the dervish,
whirling dervishes,
exactly, the whirling dervishes, and the dervish in Arabic means the poor guy, the poor man. And so basically these are the people who do not care about worldly possessions at all, and they are only there to worship God and to just admire his greatness and love him. Basically, it's more about just giving him so much love and meditation and all of that. And so they are advised not to care so much about possessions. Like, it's not wrong to have money, but it should not be what you strive to do or what your dream in life. But you look at people and they don't behave that way, Same thing with Stoics, because I looked at Stoics as well, and they were kind of the same as well. It's like money shouldn't matter so much. But if you look at the Stoics, I think a lot of them had a lot of money.
They were in a position where it was a lot easier to navigate the world that presented itself to them because they had financial means.
Yeah.
It's not easy to be a Stoic if you're really poor.
Yeah, I know. It's true. It's true. I mean, Marcus Aurelius, he was a king, wasn't he?
Yeah.
And he was very wealthy, but I think he said that you should give that money to, I don't know, spend it on people or something. I can't remember the exact quote. But it's very interesting how it's easy to be on a high horse when you don't have to worry about making a living.
Can I read you a poem?
Please.
In my bit of research for this, I talked about how wealth, the modern connotations of wealth and the modern causes of wealth are quite different. We've got these mega uber wealthy people, and it's changed. But when I looked at literature, I've got two pieces actually, both from the 1700s. One a poem by Samuel Johnson, a famous poet, and another is a reading from Adam Smith. Adam Smith, famous economist of the time, who wrote a very famous book called The Wealth of Nations.
Okay.
And he wrote that in 1776. So these two pieces of work kind of are typical of the writing thought leaders of the time would have written. And when I read them, I thought, these are so prescient. These are so relevant to today. Nothing has changed in the last 300 years.
Quite sad.
So The Vanity of Wealth by Samuel Johnson. No more thus brooding o'er yon heap, with avarice painful vigils keep. Still unenjoyed the present store, still endless sighs are breathed for more. Oh, quit the shadow, catch the prize, which not all India's treasure buys. To purchase with heaven, has gold the power? Can gold remove the mortal hour? In life, can love be bought with gold? Are friendship's pleasures to be sold? No, all that's worth a wish, a thought, fair virtue gives unbribed, unbrought. Cease then on trash thy hopes to bind, let noble views engage thy mind. With science tread the wondrous way, or learn the muses' moral lay. In social hours indulge thy soul, where mirth and temperance mix the bowl. To virtuous love resign thy breast, and be, by blessing beauty, blessed. Thus taste the feast by nature spread, ere youth and all its joys have fled. Come taste with me the balm of life, secure from pomp and wealth and strife. I boast whate'er for man was meant, in health and stellar and content. And scorn, oh, let that scorn be thine, mere things of clay that dig the mine.
Very nice.
So that you could equally fire at modern society, couldn't you?
Yes, you could.
And that kind of vanity of wealth that seems to be almost like a disease now. You know I love music. So what were the themes of music when you were a kid, Rama? What were the songs about?
I'm talking now about Arabic music. A lot of it was about thwarted love.
Right. Tainted love.
Yeah.
She loves you. Yeah. I want to hold your hand.
Yeah.
Please, please me. I love me do. So, yeah, I saw somebody talking about this. I think it's a guy called Bill Mayer. But he was talking about how music has changed. And the teenage music of my generation and then your generation afterwards is all relatively innocent stuff about, well, sex and drugs and rock and roll.
Yeah.
That's what it's about.
Yeah.
It's
and
about,
very romantic, very kind of naive in a way, kind of like very loving and suffering and love. And yeah.
And but if you look now
Yeah.
at what your children, my children are listening to, or go onto YouTube,
Yeah.
it's all about bling
Really?
and wealth.
Oh, are we talking about
And-
the rappers and...
Absolutely.
Oh, yeah.
There is so much about money, bling, ka-ching, ka-ching, ka-ching. And with it, the image of the big fur coat and the big car
Yes.
and the hull and,
Yeah.
and that just was never part of it.
I agree.
So it's almost like it is being celebrated
More than it used to be.
either because it's so far out of reach or because it is so attainable.
Accessible. I think also because people have become more honest and they don't care to appear like angels anymore. People are now kind of like, this is me, unapologetically. Take me or leave me the way I am. People back in the day used to care so much about what society thought of them. And now we're all kind of anarchists in a way, kind of like, no, this is me. I'm being honest. And I like my bling. And there's a song actually now, I've never thought about that until you brought it up just now. There's a song, Megan Trainor, I think. She says, I'd want to be me too.
Yeah.
And that would have never been a song in the past. I agree.
Yeah, it's interesting. And I think what you said there is also true, that back in the 60s, 70s and whatever, people in that youth culture were very much grounded in their social class background. So it was about stepping upwards and outwards into a brighter life, but it wasn't about wealth.
Yeah, that's true.
It wasn't about wealth.
Absolutely.
And if money was talked about, it was usually talked about that we don't need money.
Yes, I don't need money as long as I have you.
Yeah,
There's
money
a song,
can't buy me love. It was really that, as opposed to now I've got money, I can have anything I like.
Yeah, there's a song in Arabic that's really, really famous, and it says that as long as I'm with you, I don't even need much more food than a bit of cheese and some olives. And I'm like, that is so cute.
It's a great lyric.
So romantic. Cheese and olives and your love. That's all I need.
Yeah, but, I'm sitting in the car listening to music every morning on the radio. Where have all the love songs gone?
Yes, yeah.
And an awful lot of what we're listening to is about possession.
A lot of it is about
power.
Self-actualization, but that's kind of boiling over into selfishness. It's kind of like, look at me, I'm making I believe I can fly, my dreams are coming true, which is nice, and then it's kind of moving into the other
how
thing.
How does
kind
that
of
manifest itself?
Exactly.
Yeah, that's
wow, I never thought about that.
Yeah. Okay, second thing I wanted to read was the Adam Smith, because this is more. Sorry if this gets a bit intellectual now, Rama, but we're delving into economics.
This dumb person. I'm this dumb person.
Adam Smith, The Wealth of Nations. Not a book that I confess I have read all of, but I've certainly read snippets of it. Okay, this is looking at the causes of inequality. In 1776. Let's see what you think about this. We rarely hear, it has been said, of the combinations of masters, though frequently of those of workmen. But whoever imagines upon this account that masters rarely combine is as ignorant of the world as of the subject. Masters are always and everywhere in a sort of tacit but constant and uniform combination, not to raise the wages of labour above their actual rate. Masters, too, sometimes enter into particular combinations to sink the wages of labour even below this rate. These are always conducted with the utmost silence and secrecy till the moment of execution, and when the workmen yield, as they sometimes do, without resistance, though severely felt by them, they are never heard of by other people. In contrast, when workers combine, the masters never cease to call aloud for the assistance of the civil magistrate and the rigorous execution of those laws which are being enacted with so much severity against the combination of servants, labourers and journeymen.
It is so true. The
Could
same
that not also be,
exploitation.
that is 2024
Exactly.
in the UK or Germany or whatever, isn't it?
To me, this screams Amazon.
Yeah.
This is somebody who's one of the richest people on earth, and he is famous for paying his people poorly, and you will never understand why. Is this like a power game, or is it just greed? Is it to keep them in place so they would not be able to like ask for more? But I have no idea what it's for, because what do you think?
Well, I think this is the crux of the discussion about ultra wealth is to do with this. So again, I'm sorry if this is boring with statistics for people.
Not at all.
I was looking at also, what's happened to people's pay. Given what Adam Smith said and how in 1776 the bosses, the corporations are trying to, in 1776, keep the wages down. And if necessary, try and keep them lower and not allow people to complain.
Yeah.
Is that happening today? Well, since this is looking at the Financial Times documentary that I looked at, and also some work by the Economic Policy Institute, United States. And this is looking at what's happened to worker salaries since 1978. Okay, so this is in our lifetime.
Well, not mine.
Not yours, but it's definitely within my lifetime. Some of your lifetime. The typical worker, this is in the United States. We'll take that as given that we use that as a comparison for other wealth. The typical worker has enjoyed a rise in pay or salary since 1978 of only 18%.
Wow, that's nothing.
This is when the economy has enjoyed a rise in that time in excess of 60%.
Yeah.
Why is that? Well, because the companies that they work for, in line with Adam Smith and talking about keeping costs down,
the wages.
companies have been all about cost reduction, economies of scale, keeping your cost of production competitive. If necessary, going overseas and paying people in a cheaper economy to do your labour for you.
Yeah.
So they have been able to keep worker salaries really low because the worker has got no power to go higher. Erosion of unions being outlawed, labour standards lower, outsourcing, making collective bargaining something that's illegal so people can't complain.
Okay.
Unionising in Amazon or Starbucks.
Yeah, that's not allowed,
So that has happened. 18% for the typical worker. What do you think since 1978 has been the typical growth in CEO salaries in the same time period? 18% for your average worker.
Yeah. I mean, I might be exaggerating here, but I would say definitely more than 100%.
Definitely more than 100%. How about I told you 1,322%?
My goodness.
Yeah. So you can see that since 1978, the inequality gap has just grown and grown and grown. The growth in CEO compensation is 31 times greater than the growth in the average worker compensation during that time. Why is this?
Why is this? Do you have an answer?
I have an answer, but
a
I'm
rhetorical
interested.
question.
I'm seeing if do you have a theory? I'll give you my theory in a second. But why do CEOs earn? What do you? Oh, Let's put some money on it, by the way.
Yeah.
Before you give me your explanation. What's the average or the median CEO pay in the United States, do you think?
Per year?
Yes.
Median? I don't know, 1.5 million?
145 million.
Are you?
But of course, times were hard during the pandemic.
Yeah.
So they've only had a 17% pay rise since 2020.
Oh, poor things.
I mean, isn't that just terrible?
Tony, that is crazy. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I seem so naive now. My mind cannot comprehend these numbers.
I know. So in the US, they reckon the chief executive of a company earns between 250 and 350 times as much as their average median, the one in the middle, employee. That means 1 year of working for them equates to 7 or 8 lives worth of working. 7 or 8 people working their whole life would just about cover 1 year. That has to be wrong.
It is definitely wrong, because think about those people who work in factories, and I don't know, they have lung cancer because of things they're inhaling, and they have, I don't know, they lose a limb or something because of the work conditions, and then in the end they come out with nothing or with such. This is crazy. And then CEOs who end up on golf courses and having dinners and caviar and all of these things. Yeah, they earn those obscene amounts of money.
Amazon, not Jeff Bezos because he doesn't really work anymore, but Andy Jassy, who's one of the chief executives last year, earned $212 million.
I'm so sad to say that some of this money is from me.
That's over 6,400 times the median remuneration for an Amazon employee. Now, nobody is worth more than 6,400 times more than another worker.
No,
surely not.
No.
Why is it allowed? I don't get it. Anyway, what's your theory?
On how they justify it?
How did it get to be that between 1978 and now, whilst normal worker pay has just grown at a snail's pace of 18%, and yet CEO compensation has grown by in more than 1,300%?
I am not sure. I really don't think I have an explanation for this.
That's because you're not a statistician, Rama.
Okay.
So this is what the Economic Policy Institute, the guy interviewed there, called the Lake Wobegon effect. Do you know the book Lake Wobegon Days, Garrison Keillor?
No.
It's like a book about an ideal little town. It's a humorous book, fictitious Lake Wobegon, Heartland small town. But in that town, let's just say everybody believes that their child is above average.
Of course. A prodigy, yeah.
And that is what I think has happened in terms of CEO pay. So what happens is, it is a badge of honour for a company to be able to say that their CEO is paid more than average.
I see.
Okay, so what happens is, if in 1978 everybody who is a CEO gets a pay rise that is at least average, at least the average, but probably more than average, then by definition that makes the next year's average massively higher, because all you're doing, you're not evening it out. Everybody's... No company is going to say, "Oh, we're delighted to tell our, the shareholders meeting that our CEO next year is not getting very much money." Yeah,
exactly. Because then that means that the company is not doing that well.
The company's not doing that well, and the share price has gone up, so we need to honour it.
Yeah.
So what's happened is CEOs have continued to get above average pay rises. The average pay rise is 5%, so we're giving 6%, and it's just become out of control. And this is, in mathematics, is the exponential model.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's never going to be 18%. It's more likely to be 1,322%. And then it becomes unstoppable, because a CEO can say, well, if I go to this company, I'm going to get this amount.
That's true.
Good old Adam's equity theory, looking at what the equivalent position is getting somewhere else, puts that organisation always under pressure to be paying more.
Yeah.
So at one end of the scale, you've got a pressure to always give more. You've
Yeah.
always got to give more. At the other end of the scale, the pressure is not to give anything because we want to keep our costs down.
Yes. Isn't that insane?
One rule for one and one rule for the other.
Exactly.
But that's really what is happening.
This is like such greed. This is crazy, the amount of, like, how can you justify working in your workplace knowing that you earn the same amount of like everybody that is working in that?
I couldn't
show my face, exactly.
Yeah. The head of Norway's sovereign investment fund, the world's largest investment fund, there is now some kickback about executive salaries, which normally used to just get voted by the board and say, 95% would vote in favour. But now it's getting a lot more, closer.
Yeah.
A quote from him, he said, "We are seeing corporate greed reaching a level that we have never seen before." So if the head of the sovereign investment fund is saying that, then that must be something, because he's probably loaded as well.
Exactly.
So,
but even he cannot deny it. This reminds me of I don't know if you know the story, because I think that this is not going to end well. This is going to end in disaster, because if it's exponential and it's always rising, there is going to be a tipping point where everything collapses.
Yeah.
Do you know the children's story, The Fisherman and His Wife?
I've heard the name, but remind me, what happens?
So basically, a fisherman and his wife, they live in a pigsty, and they are very, very poor. And then one day the fisherman goes fishing and he sees, and he like puts his, what's it called? The rod in the water, and a magic fish or something comes out of the water, and she's like, "Oh, you caught me. If you let me go, I'll grant you a wish."
Yeah.
And he said, "No, I don't need anything. I'm fine. I'm happy." So he lets the fish go. He goes home and he tells his wife, and his wife is like, "You did what?
What?
You let the fish go when the fish was going to grant you a wish. You go back right now and you try to catch the same fish. And if you catch the fish and she asks you what you want, you say, 'I would like us to have a hut to live in.'"
Yes.
Because this pigsty is really not fit. Yeah, not fit for human, like living. So he goes back, and he goes and he tries to find the fish, and the fish comes and he's like, "I'm really, really sorry to bother you, but you said you would offer me a wish. Could you please grant us a hut instead of the pigsty where we live? It's really not fit for us to live in." And the fish says, "No problem." So the fisherman goes home and he sees his wife living in a hut, and he's like, "Ooh, this is very nice, isn't it?"
Yeah.
And she's like, "Yeah, it's really cool." But then at night she can't sleep, and he's like, "Why can't you sleep?" She's like, "'Cause I'm really upset." And he's like, "Why are you upset?" "Well, I don't want a hut anymore. Other people live in nice places and I live in a hut. That's not fair. I want to live in a stone palace. Go back and find your fish." And ask the fish for a stone palace. And he's like, "Come on, don't be ridiculous now." No, I want you to go, and you have to go. Otherwise, she'll be sulking, she'll be mad. So he goes the next day, and he's really sad. And he's like, "I'm really, really sorry. This is not me. This is my wife. She won't rest. She wants her stone palace. Could you please give us a stone palace?" And the fish is like, "No problem." So he goes home, and he sees his wife in a stone palace. There are maids around, people are cleaning,
just like my place.
Exactly. Like mine too. And he's like, "Are you happy?" She's like, "Oh, this is so much better. Yes, I really like this." But then the same thing happens at night. She can't sleep. She's already thinking of the next thing. And he's like, "What now?" And she said, "I don't know. I was like outside my palace and I saw the king on his, in his carriage. And I'm like, I can't take how he looked so arrogant, and I want to be king. So you go back to your fish, tell her I want to be king and I want to live in his palace." He's like, "Are you joking?" And she's like, "No, I mean it. You have to go." So the next day he goes and he finds the fish, and the fish is like, "What now?" And he says, "I'm really sorry, but my wife won't rest until she becomes king." And she's like, "Okay, you go back and she'll be king." So he goes there, she's king. Next day, she's like, "I don't want to be king, I want to be emperor." Same thing happens. He goes to the fish, "Please, please, please, let her be emperor." She becomes emperor. She's living this amazing life. She's not happy. She wants to be pope. And then she becomes the Pope, and then he goes again. Then she wants to be God, and then he goes to the fish, and he's like, she wants to be God, and she's like, okay. You got it.
Yeah.
And then he goes back home and he sees her living in the pigsty again. And he sits next to her and they're happier again. Because, I really think that greed will reach a point where it's like, you will just fall and it's not going to be pretty.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's true, isn't it, that those people who have, you very rarely hear them decide, I'm just happy where I am. I mean, I think there's always a need for more, or there appears to be something else. And, I've reached this level of wealth.
Yes, now we have to push the goalpost a little bit, and I have to be... I must say, I have to always stop and remind myself I am pretty happy with where I am. I am really content. I think I have a great life. I don't need much more than this. Sometimes I'm thinking about the future. I would like to have a bit more security. This would be nice. I'll go and buy myself a lottery ticket every now and then. But otherwise, I must remind myself that I am content with my life. Yeah. It's good. So
but I do think that so much of it is down to your individual circumstances because, like you, my view on wealth is, I don't aspire to great wealth anymore.
Yeah.
I probably did when I was younger, but I'm content. And contentment is a good thing.
Yeah.
But it's very easy to say that when you're in a situation where financially you aren't worried about how you're going to pay the rent and how you're going to pay for your groceries.
Yeah, but that's good enough. You have people who have everything and they're still not content.
Yeah.
So that's the danger of it, I think, that you're not able to enjoy where you are because you're always thinking about the next goal and the next goal.
Shakespeare.
Yeah?
Shakespeare said, whiles I am a beggar, I will rail and say that there is no sin but to be rich. And being rich, my virtue then shall be to say there is no vice but beggary. Which kind of goes along with what we've just been saying. I think in this situation there is no safe position. Everybody's speaking from a point of view of the wealthy person.
We always demonize the other, right? We
complain about those welfare scroungers.
Yeah.
And, why should I when I work so hard for my money?
I pay taxes and you're giving that to people who don't work.
Why should I be helping out?
Yeah.
Why am I helping for famine relief in an African country? That's not my fault. I work hard for my money, blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
And then that person who is working hard in an Amazon fulfillment center, seeing that the CEO is earning $211 million a year, saying, hang on, that's not fair.
That's not fair.
I could have a little piece of that.
And my suffering is because of his wealth.
Yeah.
Yeah. Where that might not be true, but of course they see it that way.
How does the world start to equate itself then, or to make itself more compassionate when it comes to... Because I think the disparity in wealth is a sign of a lack of compassion in the world, don't you think?
I think it's just a sign that the world has gone out of control, to be honest with you. I don't know much about compassion. There is definitely a lot of compassion in the world. And you see a lot of people giving when there's an earthquake or there's any kind of disaster. People really do chip in. But it's mostly poorer people, middle class people that chip in. And it's not really the very wealthy.
The people who give most to charity aren't the people who can afford to give to charity.
So I think that's the idea of communism, isn't it? That's how communism started, by saying, look, this is not fair. In the feudal system, people owned villages, owned people, and this is not okay. And we need to, give to everyone equally and stuff. But that's the problem. This does not work in practice, People in power will definitely abuse it because it's in our nature to always want to stand out, to have something more than the others.
I think that there's nothing wrong with meritocracy or rewarding some people more than others because of either the talent or the efforts that they bring to the party.
Yeah.
But I just
it has to be in a human kind of scope. It's something that we can understand.
Yeah, within boundaries
exactly.
Where the discrepancy between a CEO salary is not 1,300 times.
Cannot be.
Maybe it's 10 times.
Yeah, cannot be.
I wouldn't have a problem with that, but I do have a problem with 1,300 times more being earned.
Okay.
But do you think that's part? Is that the fault of my generation? where in the 70s and that sort of Protestant work ethic, it was all about climbing the ladder, and climbing the ladder meant climbing the ladder financially as well.
Yeah.
So, changing the class system, so climbing out of being working class to become middle class, home ownership, owning your own property, important, and that's a kind of form of wealth. Having a pension is a form of wealth. So all of these things
I never
were
thought about it
bringing
like that.
wealth to people that previously never had it.
Yeah, that could well be your fault. Yes.
Thank you. It's official, world. The inequality gap is Tony's fault. But I do feel my generation...
I think so too. I think you're right. These things that came out during that generation, kind of like, post-World War maybe, and a little bit after that as well, kind of like, let's try to make as much money as possible because you never know what might happen, and things like that could happen again. And the banks then became involved in everything, and they started to make, I don't know, more and more money. And then that's the other thing, is like, once there's a world record, people want to always pass that. So once they saw that the ceiling has been lifted up a little bit for how much money you can make, people wanted to make even more. And so it's like a race that never ends.
And the other thing is now you can hide it as well, which wasn't always possible.
Yeah, that's true.
You had to be accountable. Your money had to be visible.
Yeah, under your mattress or something. And now it's like offshore.
How much money do you think is hidden in offshore tax havens?
Oh, I can't even, like, as you have seen so far, I'm very naive when it comes to money, apparently.
So the Tax Justice Network estimates that between 20 to 30, wait for it, trillion dollars in financial assets are sitting offshore. Because of the secrecy laws that pervade, precise numbers are impossible to come by.
Yeah, this is
But
just an estimate.
We know that in the world's financial system, money that could be being circulated to create wealth for others, to create jobs for others, to create infrastructure for others, is being parked offshore.
We can't access it.
So that it's no longer accessible. Per year, that equates to around $427 billion is being siphoned out of the world's economy every year to go and live in a tax haven. And that's where I think the legal or social policy and legal systems could be brought to change things.
But how is it legal that banks in Switzerland or in Liechtenstein or in, I don't know, the Cayman Islands, how is this legal for them?
That's for another podcast, really, Rama. But it all came around post-war when after the Second World War, because of America's role in the Second World War, everything was tied to the US dollar. So banking systems were very limited in what they could do. But then good old UK broke away from that and created a number of new financial vehicles, which ended up with the offshore tax vehicle.
So the British Empire is to blame yet again.
Of course, yeah. But I think it's, again, just rather like this stuff with executive pay. Maybe at the time it was a small place, but now it's just mushroom to the effect that anybody, it doesn't matter whether you're a money launderer, an oligarch, or just an honest, hardworking person, you're all lumped together, which is what you've decided is, I have money and I don't want anybody else to be able to see it or to be able to make use of it. So I'm going to put it in a place where nobody can get at it.
But what's the point? Like they say in Arabic, I don't know, and maybe in other languages as well, like the shroud has no pockets. It's like you're not taking any of this with you and you're not enjoying it because it's offshore. So why are you hoarding this money?
I don't know.
Anyway, I think we have to finish soon because it's been going on for a long time.
Have you got a good reading for us to finish with, do you think?
I found a really nice poem that I like. I don't know if you'll agree with me, but I think it talks about...
Let's finish with a poem.
Yeah.
You've been pretty heavy on the stats.
This has been heavy on numbers today, yes.
Yeah.
So this is a poem about a different kind of wealth. So it's called Love's Millionaire by Florence May Alt. Within my little cottage are peace and warmth and light, and loving welcome waiting when I come home at night. The polished kettle steaming, the snowy cloth is spread, and close against my shoulder there leans a smooth brown head. Her eyes are lit with laughter. They light the world for me. "For how much would you sell me? Now tell me, sir," cries she. 'Tis then I answer somehow between a smile and a tear. "Not for the gold in Klondike, the gold in Klondike, dear." When the cosy tea is over, with many a frolic fond, I sit and read my paper, and from the room beyond I hear the clink china, the tread of nimble feet, and broken bits of singing that somehow ripple sweet. I hear a rush and rustle behind my easy chair. Short, chubby arms enclasp me and choke me unaware. Into my arms is tumbled a crinkled golden head, a ball of fluffy whiteness that ought to be in bed. She asks her mother's question. I kiss the answer clear. Not for all the gold Klondike, the gold in Klondike, dear. In dim and dusky office, I dig my bits of gold. I suffer not with hunger, nor perish with the cold. My nuggets needs be tiny. I dig them with a pen. But the Yukon's golden gravel I leave for other men. My treasure lies exhaustless. My claim is staked with care. What is all the gold in Klondike since my love's millionaire? I'm love's millionaire.
Yes. Yeah, and you have to, let's be honest. Let's be honest then, Rama.
Yeah.
If you had to choose between love,
Yeah.
true love of your children or of your partner,
Yeah.
or being a millionaire, would you take the money or would you take the love?
I mean, 100% I would choose the love.
Yeah.
I mean, imagine if I had all this money and didn't have anyone to enjoy it with. I would not want that. No, 100% the love.
And that's reassuring, isn't it? It's reassuring. I sort of feel the same way. That in a way, all the money in the world cannot buy you the things that are most important.
The invaluable things.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, interesting.
Okay.
Wow, that's, yes.
We covered
good.
a lot of ground today.
A rich man
Yeah.
is nothing but a poor man with money.
Exactly. It's true.
Back where we started.
Yep.
Aristotle and Onassis.
Onassis.
Which for a guy with a lot of money had a lot to say about it. But
Yeah.
at least that's quite self-deprecating, isn't it?
Yes, that's true.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Very good. I
Alrighty
really
then.
enjoyed that. I'm a little bit depressed now.
Yeah, it is a bit depressing, but at the same time, there is something about just taking yourself out of this rat race and say, this doesn't interest me. It does affect me, and it makes me sad.
And I also sense there's something in the air that says that the general populace is not going to accept it for much longer.
Yeah.
I feel there's a bit of movement or hostility in the air, but I don't
think so. See, I don't agree with you. I think we have become so complacent and people have accepted their fates. I mean, if you look at the caste system, it's been going on for a long time.
Yeah, maybe
people
you're
just
right.
accept their fate.
Maybe we are too easily
We're
pacified
just cogs
by,
in the wheels, and then we just continue working and providing for the rich.
We'll just go back to Instagram and social media, and that pacifies us. Maybe that's part of the role of it.
Yeah.
I don't know, but yeah.
Yeah.
Well, on that really cheery note, I'm going to have a whip round and see if I can afford to buy some food tonight on my way home. Get a mortgage out for a tank of petrol.
Okay.
And then, that's
Hopefully
good.
next week we'll have something more cheerful to talk about. How about that?
Yes.
Okay.
Good.
Good. See you next week.
See you next week. Bye.
Bye.
We hope that you've enjoyed listening to the readings we chose for you today.
And that our musings have ignited your thoughts.
If you've enjoyed this episode, please share it with your friends and those you think would enjoy it.
If you have any thoughts, suggestions, or any kind of feedback, please send us an email using the email in the show notes.
We'd love to hear from you with the words that make you.